Hello everyone, this is Lucas, and today I'm going to be taking you through the project file of Stellarhearted. Stellarhearted was originally created as a mashup in submission to Nico Plus's collaborative mashup slash remix album, Distorted Worlds, which is an album centered around the music of Porter Robinson, who is an EDM producer. In a way, it's because of Nico Plus that I ended up mixing a lot of these sources, and as a result, he's pretty much responsible for this upload being what it is. So huge thank you to Nico Plus, and he's a phenomenal mashup artist slash producer. I highly encourage that you check out his works, and I respect him very much. I think he's easily one of my favorites. Favorite mashup artists that this generation has to offer. So this is a mashup between Chatham by ConsciousThoughts and Aritus, Lionhearted by Porter Robinson, and Interstellar Flight by Megumi Nakajima. To kind of break down this project file, I have everything color-coded and nicely organized this time. Green will show the Future Funk song and all the stuff that I did with it. Red is Lionhearted. Yellow is the synthesizers and plucks that I made for the drop. Blue are the vocal chops that are sprinkled throughout the song. Orange is the main a cappella and the effects that go with it. And purple is just a series of miscellaneous effects that I use to either create build-ups or impacts throughout the mashup. So kind of starting this first, we have this sample here. That's actually my mom's tape, well, cassette player. So I went into my closet, I got her a cassette player, and I just recorded that and sampled it, just to give the feel that it's like when you press the play button, that it's like you're using an old device to play the music. And I know that a lot of future funk songs will use samples like that to just kind of give the vibe, and I dig it. I like it. What I like about future funk as a genre is that it uses older samples from like the 70s and 80s, but it has modern production techniques in it, which I like because it's like a mix between the old and the new. And as a result, that kind of informed how I designed this mashup in terms of what the sources I wanted to mix, and what the Japanese vocals and the kind of electronic feel that Lionheart provides. So going into it, we have this. So what we have going on is these vocal chops here. So people who know the song Interstellar Flight, they know this part, but I chop it just to give a different feel to it, because a lot of future funk songs will have kind of like vocal chopping and screwing. In my case, I didn't really screw the vocals or pitch shift it. It's more like just chopping, and it just gave it a little more interest, given the genre that it's operating in. I also cut right to the chase by introducing Lionhearted, just to give that feel when the percussion kicks in, that you also get the Lionhearted. So people who know the song Lionhearted is like, oh shit, it's that, it's the plucks from the song. One thing going into the verse, I have this effect right here. This is a backwards, well, like a reversed reverb. Essentially, to do this, you take an audio snippet from the a cappella or your vocals, you put a reverb on it, and as the reverb decays, you isolate the tail end of the reverb, and then you reverse it. And as a result, it helps to kind of bring the feel into the vocals. Even though a lot of these kind of design moves won't be catched, I feel like it kind of contributes to the self-conscious feel of this mashup. So going into the verse, we're gonna, you're gonna see how it all comes together. So interesting thing about this a cappella is that I rarely ever work with an a cappella this dirty. So the thing is, when I extracted it with Utagoe, it gave me this a cappella that wasn't very clean at all. And for some reason, and I don't know why, there is this kind of like this filtered sound effect that is almost like a flanger. It's panned straight to the right ear, and it just exists throughout the entire song. And if you listen to the original Interstellar Flight, you'll hear that weird sound panned to the right ear. In this context, I wanted to remove that sound, so as a result, I took the acapella and ran it through a center channel extractor with using Izotope RX7. But as a result, because I ran the center channel extractor, it centered the vocals, but I wanted the vocals to be a little wider. So as a result, I used this knob and kind of separated it, like did some stereo separation, just to make it feel a little wider and build and really contribute to the feel, the size of the room. And also, no, a lot of future funk music will have wider vocals as well. So that's kind of that. Here we have volume automation, which is a sidechain. Now what a sidechain essentially is whenever there's a kick drum in the instrumental, everything else ducks in volume. And this is to allow the kick drums to really peek through and also maintain audio levels at a very comfortable pace. And also helps to immerse the vocals as well. Well, more like immerse the vocals into the instrumental. There are 3 dimensions to mixing that I'm aware of, or actually more like 3 dimensions that I use for mixing music. The first dimension is volume. So as a result, when it comes to getting volumes right, you can see here I go through different parts and I adjust the volume. And even with sidechain, the sidechain is to assist with volume. There's wideness, which is the second dimension, which gives the really it builds the size of the perceived space that you're in while listening to the music. And the third is frequency content, which is something that is quite difficult to really get right. So just looking at what I did with the acapella, I have Melodyne, which is my pitch shifting software. I'll get into that a little later. I use Panomatic just to get the volumes right. I automate it, and I like Panomatic because you can pan and do volume. I like that. Izotope Vinyl, I set it to 1970s because apparently that's when future funk, well actually sorry, no, that's when funk music was more prevalent. It's kind of like a distortion plugin that distorts the vocals and makes it sound a little more old. Delay bank just to fill the space of the vocals, and some reverb to open it up. I decreased the decay a little bit because if you have delay and reverb going on and your decay isn't really as short as this, it will crowd the frequencies in the mid-highs, and as a result it'll make the sound a little bit wonky. And if there's a frequency that exists that's not really contributing anything to the mix, pretty much just get rid of it, just so that it keeps every audio track in its lane and keeps it nice and clear. EQ, this is my first kind of pass at it. I decreased the low mids, a little bit of the mids, a little bit of the uppers, just to make it sit comfortably in the mix. And here I just do some micro EQing, just to get rid of some frequencies that I didn't want momentarily. So as I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but the song is in C minor. All the sources are in C minor. Interstellar Flight is in C minor for the most part. Now, the reason why I say that is because there are moments in the acapella that actually have a momentary key change. You can call this like passing tones or a series of accidental stack, kind of following each other. But it goes in C minor, and it has a momentary key change to D sharp minor. And to do it, it's really interesting how they do it. But as a result of me not having these stems to Chatham, I couldn't really pull that off from a music theory perspective. So I had to modify the vocals in order to do that. So with Melodyne, this is my go-to pitch shifting software because it isolates the different notes in the vocals, and I just pitch shift it here. So just to listen to what it sounds like and what I did with it. So that's just that part pitch shifted. Apologies in advance because every time I try to run any sort of like plugin, my computer's really old. It's more than a decade old, so it struggles a bit. So you're gonna hear some statics and like some stuttering and all that. So that's that. So when it comes to what's going up here, is I chop the instrumental to either have vocals in areas where I want it or remove vocals where I don't want it. Because future funk is a genre that deals a lot with repetition, it's forgiving to to do some chops here and there just to really carry off the feel and the big ideas that I wanted to have for this mashup. So structure wise, it's kind of weird in that I have the first half of the verse and the second half of the verse, but I remove the pre-chorus. And the reason why I remove it for this part only is so I can go right into the Porter Robinson kind of synths that he introduces. In a lot of mashups, well, actually, no, sorry, not mashups, in a lot of music where the drop or the climax is very instrumental, a lot of the times the chorus will be pushed into the position of a pre-chorus. So as a result, that's why I have the chorus here. And in order to have that transition to say that, hey guys, the chorus is coming up, I have the Kira voice sample. I think that means like shine or sparkle or something. And that just kind of leads it into it. And I have the synths from Lionhearted come in. So this delay bank it just increases the size of the room that you're in, but the Kira is also traveling to the right ear. And the reason why I have that traveling to the right ear is because other elements that appear in the song will be hard panned to the left ear. So we have the chorus in the position of a pre-chorus. So the people that know the song Interstellar Flight, I actually cut the chorus a little bit short. And the reason why I cut it short is because it wouldn't fit structure-wise. But whenever I do a cut for anime, like Japanese vocals, I make sure that my cuts are in areas where the sentence will still make sense. Some mashup artists, well, anime mashup artists, what they'll do is that when they chop vocals or they cut vocals, it'll cut off in the middle of a sentence. But what I do is I look at the translation of the Japanese vocals, and I make sure that my chops exist in areas where the sentence is fully concluded. In order to make this drop special, I have this filter that goes on Chatham and Lionhearted. So the vocals kind of hold your hand as we go through this transition, but the instruments kind of duck and the frequencies kind of like change just so that when the drop comes, it has a lot more impact without being too overly loud and obnoxious. So I have this software. Oh, sorry, not software. I have this plugin, this VST. It's not native to FL. It's called Span Plus. I really like this plugin. When I was talking with Maguganator, who was the audio engineer that reviewed this mashup, he introduced me to this thing, and this essentially measures the frequency content, which is one of the dimensions of mixing that I was talking about. So this thing is great because it actually shows the levels far better than Parametric EQ2, which is an FL native. So if we look at it, wow, that's very laggy. Hold on. Notice how the green, which shows the frequency levels, it kind of dips in the middle. A lot of future funk songs will have that dip. But in order to kind of make way for the vocals, I also do another layer of scooping the mids a bit so that the vocals can exist in a comfortable like frequency relative to everything else. One thing that I think I forgot is that when it comes to future funk tracks, the sidechain, the release time on the sidechain is usually a lot longer to give more of a swingy feel. That's probably the wrong word, not really a swingy feel, but it gives more of like a dynamic feel. But because in the context of this mashup, I wanted the vocal presence to do a lot of the movement, that I wanted to retain a lot of that, the integrity of the vocals, so I didn't have that. The sidechain here is mostly for It's more like a mastering frequency constant thing. And another thing, actually, let me just show you how the frequencies kind of work with this build-up. So I'm going to open up span, and it might be very staticky, but try to do your best to kind of look at what the frequencies are doing. So notice how a lot of the frequencies got lower and chopped. It's just so that when the drop comes, it really brings it all together. And the reason why my drop sounds like that, or the reason why I kind of make it sound a lot wider, is because the original Porter Robinson song has the instrumentals panned left ear, right ear, and it's very wide, but the vocals are more centered, which works in the context of an EDM song. For the context of a future funk song where a lot of the vocals exist in a lot more wider, that's why I kind of treated my vocals to be wider. And in order to kind of gauge the wideness of a mix, I use this thing, Izotope Insight 2. And this thing's excellent because you can see the sound field. Here's where it's centered, and you have your left ear and your right ear. I'm going to try this again, and hopefully it doesn't lag as bad as before. It probably will, but let's just see how it'll work. Notice when the drop came, it was a lot wider. So if you look at the kind of the sound field of Lionhearted, it has a similar kind of thing like that. So this part right here, because the chorus, like when I chop the chorus, I wanted to have that you know, just so that the vocals don't just end, it kind of like holds your hand as you go through the drop. So a lot of future funk will have loops of a vocal sample, so that's kind of what I did here. But then I kind of get rid of it rather relatively quickly, just so that it doesn't get too annoying, and I do some like stereo panning left, right ear, and all that stuff. Yeah. And the nice thing about Lionhearted is that it has these really nice like build-ups and like nice snares. So I just kind of chopped that so that it existed there, just to really give that feel that, hey, there's something good happening. The synthesizer, so initially when I was in the experimental phase of mixing these songs, what captured me was the drop from Lionhearted and how it worked with Chatham, the future funk song. And I couldn't just loop, I couldn't just take the audio file of Lionhearted and just slap it on. I find that a lot of Lionhearted mashups that I've listened to, well, there's not a lot out there, but the ones that I have listened to, a lot of them kind of suffer from being oversaturated in sound, and the mastering just kind of gets wonky. So as a result, I have my own synths here, which is just a bunch of layered sounds. I'm going to get into that. But similar to what we did with the vocals, I sidechain these as well, just so that it, you know, it leaves way for all the frequencies to sit in a nice space. So this kind of sound is a combination of the silent lead transfer, which is the same lead as I have for color washed, but this time I use it for backing. And I filter it so that it has a high shelf filter, and it gives some warmth to the mix. It kind of grounds it a bit, and it also gives the certain parts a little more depth. Silent 1, this is kind of like the main sound that carries you through it. And I have a higher one. Actually, I pretty much just like double it up. One's a lower octave, one's a higher octave. But yeah, it's this wave. I can't remember what this wave's called, but I high pass it as well. Some arpeggiation well, arpeggiator, I don't know the terminology, but I essentially split it into sixteenths because in Lionhearted, even though the lead doesn't really have that, is not really cut into sixteenths, it's the distorted bass line that adds to that 16th jogging feel. So in order, because I don't want to do that with the Future Funk bass line, and I don't have the stems, I do it through the lead. So just some arpeggiator, some distortion, some chorus to give it a little more wideness, some reverb and no delay because I don't want my frequencies to crowd, and some compression, just so that it really gives that electronic feel. When it comes to mastering this, like, you know, getting the frequency content right, a lot of electronic music will have more of an even spread. So as a result, when the drop comes, I really focus on the mids so that it builds, because you know how a lot of funk music has the mid scooped. I essentially wanted to have the drop exist in the mids and in the low mids, so that it gives the feel of Lionhearted, but it has more of like an EDM vibe to it. So you can see the mids are a little more built up, and I'm sorry you had to hear that. My computer's over a decade old. I can't remember if I told you that, but it struggles with literally everything. And the wideness, of course, I think I went through that already. One thing that I like what mashup artists do that I don't see a lot of them do nowadays is retain the coherency of a mashup in a drop with vocals. Now, the Future Funk song is acting as the backing, so the bass line is doing a lot of movement, and the lead is kind of a little more conventional. But in order to retain the coherency that Interstellar Flight still exists in this mashup, I have these little vocal samples here. So those vocal samples. And one other reason why I have it like that is because in the first part I educate everyone like, hey guys, here's the chop pattern. And then it comes back again. So it kind of makes full circle. And as a result, in order to make those parts really pop, I have my lead, the sidechains going, synth volume just to make every count of 4 just start off a little stronger. I have this mute thing. I essentially just cut all the volume here. So as it goes, even though I've ended it in the piano roll here, some of the reverb carries on, but I want everything to absolutely shut down and make this vocal chop, you know, really stand out. And this vocal chop is quite centered, actually, centered in terms of wideness. So it really gives that, you know, you have that wide feel, and all of a sudden you have that centered hit, which really just brings life to it. It gives impact to it. And to lead up to it, I have the reverse reverb from before. And that's pretty much it. And then when it hits, I want it to just carry out, so that's why I have this delay envelope, and I have it pan from the right ear to the left ear. And even though people will not recognize it or like notice that it's panning, maybe on the second, third, or fourth listen, you might catch that. So I like to have little things here and there that you might not catch immediately, but will be apparent later on, especially if in like, you know, project file walkthroughs and all that. So this is what it sounds like. Now, that kind of hit, that hit doesn't exist in the normal song. So what I do is I take this drum here. This drum I sampled from the end of the song, and then I put the kind of, I just chop it and then just put it right here so that it has that nice break. So no vocals, no nothing, it sounds like this. See, the nice thing about Future Funk is the repetitive nature of it, and as a result I can pull off stuff like this. So yep, that's that, and it just pans more. And another vocal chop, which was also taken from the first part. So that's that. I also, actually, I forgot to mention, I have this thing. White noise. And white noise in electronic music gives a little sparkle to it, so I put it up in the high mids. Actually the upper mids, just so that it gives a little sparkle to the thing. And then even like like the delay volume, I control that, and just make sure that everything is where it wants to be. And mastering took me the longest. That one took several months for this upload, but yeah. So one thing that I actually added quite late into this mashup was this kind of this symbol. Just so that it splits the first half and the second half of the drop. And then another thing that Porter Robinson does with Lionhearted is he has this hard, like actually not really like a hard thing, it's more like a soft piano on the left ear that's panned straight to the left ear, that I found that a lot of Porter Robinson drop tutorials didn't have. So what I did, I just went into Nexus. I got my grand piano because, man, I use that thing for everything. But because the softness would get lost in a lot of the things, like the vocal layering, the future funk stuff, I made sure that I got the hammer on the piano, so I didn't touch the attack on it. I just made sure it just really like sticks out. But it's very subtle, so I don't expect anyone to really catch it. But it gives a little more, it makes it feel a little bit different. So yeah, that's pan to the left ear. This layer over here, this actually was like this chorus. This is like a sound font from Metroid. But I didn't include this because I didn't like how it felt. I feel like it didn't work with the genre of future funk. So going into the second verse. Oh, actually, I should note, when it comes to like the lead trancer, I double up on the notes here, thirds apart, just so that it gives that gives it a little more, makes it a little more different. I think Porter did that. I can't really remember. You'll notice that there are a lot of cuts here and there, and that's because every time there is sound where it doesn't need to be, where there doesn't need to be sound, I just get rid of that sound. And to allow for a smooth transition, have some vocal chops, and the lead synths carry off into the distance because I have a delay on it. Just very smooth. And now we have the acapella again. One thing of note that I actually shouldn't be telling you guys this, but this is what I did. There are vocal samples here. So actually, let me just take off the acapella for a moment. So interestingly, that part of the future funk song does not exist in isolation anywhere else where the vocals do not exist. So as a result, there were two ways that I could have handled this. One is I could have used Melodyne to isolate the frequencies of those vocals and remove it entirely, but it gave a mechanical tin sound. So I just drop the volume every time the vocals come in, just so that I can retain the coherency that yes, the future funk song has vocals, but the vocals that I included, Megumi Nakajima's vocals, are what is the focus. So going into the second half, because the pre-chorus of Interstellar Flight is really nice, I had to keep it somehow, right? And in order to really make the second half of the song different from the first half, I include the pre-chorus here. And in how I've kind of structured this mashup is that I included the bass line There's a really nice like bass riff. I don't know the proper terminology, but there's a lot of movements in the bass line, and I include it here. So remember when I said that the Kira really traveled to the right ear? This is the sound that's panned straight to the left ear. So yeah, left ear. I was gonna say, yeah. So there's a lot of movement going on there, and there's an interesting music theory coming up. So this part right here, this note is actually an accidental. Now, an accidental is not an accident. It's a deliberate thing that a vocalist or an instrument or any sound will do to add intrigue to it. A lot of anime songs will have, well, actually not a lot, but some anime songs will have a key that deliberately goes out of the established key. Now, the reason why I didn't pitch shift this one is because this is in a minor key, you can raise the 7th scale degree by 1/2 step, and it'll still check out from a theory perspective, and it gives intrigue. So that's why we just left it. So all this stuff here is just corrective EQing and stuff like that. Really, this kind of part is organized rather poorly, but it got the sound that I wanted. And I realized that because the chorus of Interstellar Flight is quite important to the song, instead of having it as pre-chorus only, I decided to chop it so that the instrumental has the guitar in it, which is like the climax, and it has the chorus going on off at the same time. So interesting thing about this is, in order to to kind of give an atmosphere to it, to say that yes, the chorus is here and it's to give impact, I have this sample of a crowd cheering. And of course I put a sidechain on that as well. But essentially, like, no one's going to hear that, but it gives the feel that, it's a big room and that people are having fun. Even if you don't hear it directly, I think it subconsciously appeals to that. Anyways, yeah, there's that crowd. Because, in the anime or in the movie, Ranka kind of like performs in front of crowds and stuff. And yeah, so that's that. And every time I want to give that kind of feel, there's a part where the vocal interjection comes back from the Future Funk song. So I stop literally like the vocals, and I stop the crowd cheering to give that to let it kind of shine in its lane. Like, no one's gonna hear that, but I think it just, I don't know, I wanted it. Interestingly, when I was contributing to Triple Q's album, because a lot of electronic drops will have white noise, like what I did, I rarely see crowd cheering used as kind of like a white noise. So that's that. In order to make the second part of the chorus different, I introduced the plucks back again. And because structure-wise, it wouldn't let me the original Interstellar Flight song wouldn't let me go through with the rest of the chorus, I just do a little loop here, and I have Akira just to kind of keep it going, and to say that, hey, here's the chorus again. So there's the plucks, and then we're gonna go back to the kind of build up, but instead of having the chorus as the pre-chorus, I have the la 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 part as the build up. So yep, there's that, and then I have the chop pattern go again, and it pans and it goes lower in volume and stuff like that. and I just wanted it to kind of come back and then just stop at this kick drum right here, just to really say that, hey, the drop's coming again. So here's the kick sampled from the end of the song, the kick from Lionhearted, and of course, you know, I ducked the volume here just so that each kick stays in its lane, because you can layer kicks, it's fine as long as it doesn't clip or anything. And then I just have another Lionhearted sample here. And that's like a very video gamey sound, and I use that as kind of like a backing, just to give interest to it. And I put a hip-hop symbol here, because Lionhearted also has that as well. And I put a filter on the vocals so that it changes a little bit, because originally the Interstellar Flight song, these vocals don't loop twice, but I wanted it to loop and really bridge that. And then, you know, I have a side chain here when the drop comes, just to give it more impact. So we're gonna play it. So there's that. And the drop is kind of similar to the first one, except the first drop has a guitar in it, and the second drop doesn't have a guitar in it. But to kind of compensate for that, and because I didn't want the drops to sound the same, I want the synths to be the focus. But in order to build the feel of the synths, I have my white noise going on, and I have the crowd cheering, so it really builds up the mids a little more. And I have these random effects that really just kind of add space, add, you know, different sounds and textures to the mix. You know, stuff like that. And of course my side chain. This sweep effect comes from the song Indestructible by Not Your Dope. I use the same effect in Color Washed. But yeah, a lot of the stuff there. And as an kind of a nod to Porter Robinson's works, I discovered Porter Robinson a long time ago through the song Language. And Language held a very, very special place in my heart for the longest time. So I felt like I wanted to kind of pay respect to that. So as a result, even though Language is in a completely different key, I take the progression of Language and I have it at the end right here. So let's just listen to it. You're gonna see what I do here. So just a little treat. Even though a lot of people won't really notice it, the people who know Language and will hear that, it's just like, oh shit, Language, that was a good song. You know, just to make the second drop a little different from the first one, and I just wanted it there. I just wanted it there, because mashups, you know, exist as it pleases, right? And yeah, so we have some volume stuff, and go back to the vocal chops. Oh, one thing about the Language part is because I have this this lead trancer, I gotta drop it a little bit, but they're still separated by thirds, but I drop it a little bit so that it kind of grounds it before I go into the outro. There's the plucks again. And then the vocal chops pan and travel off into the distance. So yeah, this is the project file for Stellarhearted. This was interesting to make. I wanted to really take all of what I had been studying in music theory and audio engineering and really apply it into this mashup. And the reason why I kind of spent so much time with it, in fact, I've spent 5 months working on this, is because I wanted to really validate mashups as an art form. Um, I've received criticism like, Lucas, you know, uh, mashups shouldn't be a person's main focus on a channel, or things like, with you mixing anime music, you're just wasted potential, and other stuff like, oh, mashups are just a product of like a byproduct of meme culture, internet meme culture, and all of those comments rubbed me in the wrong way, and I felt like I wanted to prove something. Even though those people who make those comments will never see this, I felt like I needed to prove this for myself, because I rarely upload, and I want this upload to be, I want it to come in strong. And the reason why I spent so much time with it is because there's a saying that complexity is the enemy of execution. And a lot of what I had done here was just trying to figure out the volumes and how to make everything sound professional. When it came into like the 3 dimensions of mixing, with the volume, the wideness, the frequency content, and just everything. This was a little more of a technical walkthrough this time, but I felt that it was all necessary in order to really get the idea across of what this mashup is. Even though I wouldn't be surprised if this mashup divides my fan base, because it's kind of out there. It's a little bit different in that it's future funk using modern electronic music, using an anime vocal that is mastered and originally in its context like kind of like a rock song. So I really took a risk with this one, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Hopefully everyone else enjoys this mashup, because, well, at the time of this recording, it's September 28th, and I have no idea when this is going to get released. I'm waiting to do the visuals, but yeah, thank you for listening, sitting in and listening to this very long and exhaustive project file walkthrough. And anyone who is a newcomer to mashups, I really hope that you take the time to, well, if mashups are just a side thing, mix what you want, have fun. But if you want to take it really seriously, I hope that this project file acts as a precedent to kind of show you how far mashups can be taken. And even though I have a lot of room to grow, at this point in my mashup, not a career because I don't make money off of it, at this point in my mashup career, I feel that this is the best that I can do at this point in time. So, this one's to address all the criticism that I've received and have been exposed to. And I hope that mashup artists keep mixing music, and I hope that this project file allowed you to appreciate this mashup in a different way from the initial listening. Thank you to everyone reviewing it, Nico Plus, the guys at West, there's a whole bunch of other people that reviewed this. Naki Naiko for really pushing me forward to saying that, yes, this is a mashup that you should continue. And, Maguganator, who is the audio engineer who taught me a lot about this stuff. So, yeah, thank you for listening. And my uploads are going to probably be less frequent. Even though I'm pretty much uploading once a year, it might be less frequent than that, because I want to spend a lot more time with how I mix music, and I want every upload to be at this quality or better. So that's it. Have a good night. See ya.